All right, so I just wanted to go live real quick and share some stuff with you. I got a 5. Remember the we were doing a calculation with a 500 kVA transformer, and we did it by hand first. I'll show you the hand calculation. We went through this example, if you recall. Remember this example? We went through a 500 kVA transformer. We had an 800 amp breaker. We had two 500 MCM conductors on the primary feeding the transformer on that 800 amp breaker. And then we had 6 500 MCM conductors on the secondary of the transformer, feeding a 2000 amp panel board. So what I did was I took our calculations and I put together an Excel spreadsheet, fault current. So I took the same example and I ran you might remember seeing this Excel spreadsheet. I did this a while ago, and it's available on my website for those who register. But I took the incident energy. I have a incident energy document that calculates calories per centimeter squared based upon a configuration. So what I did was I modeled this, right? So there's our 50,000 amps. There's our voltage. The 50,000 amps, that's what we said was available upstream of this panel board. I'm calling it the utility, but it can technically be anything upstream. And then I wish I could. I can. There it is. I'm trying to get my, all right. So, and then if we recall, the real and reactive was 0.001977. That was the real Z per unit, because we took the 50,000 and we converted that over to Z per unit. And we did a X to R ratio of 6. And those are your typical X to R ratios. If you're near a generation plant, then you're from 15 to 30. If you're a long open wire, then you're from 2 to 16, and your typical range is from 5 to 12. I just put it right in the middle of the road. Well, not in the middle of the road. 5 to 12, it would be a little bit higher. But I just put a 6. And we can look and see what changing this. So now that I have an Excel spreadsheet, I can make changes, right? So we can change that X to R ratio based upon whatever we want and see what the impact is all the ways downstream. That gives us those tolerances, right? So it's really good to understand the tolerances, but at least now you understand how we derive, how do we convert 50,000 amps over to a Z per unit, and then how we convert that Z per unit into a real and reactive component based upon the X to R. Inverse tangent gets you the theta, and then cosine theta times the magnitude gets you your real. Sine theta times the magnitude gets you your reactive component. So I just want to go through and take a look. I just want to show you that, yep, so here's what I'll do is these two numbers, remember these two numbers, this would be 1.977 times 10 to the negative 3. This is 2, that's 1.1864 times 10 to the negative 2. Okay, so remember those two numbers, and then I'll show you my, this was our source, and we had 1.977 3 times 10 to the negative 3, and then there's our 1.186 times 10 to the negative 2. And if you recall how we got there, we just basically took the base, I base, which is the full load amps, divided by the actual. That gets us our Z per unit, which was 0.01208. We calculated theta. We did the magnitude times cosine to get real. We took the magnitude times sine to get x. So we have our R and our x, and that, my friends, is right here. So we are able to see, there's our real and reactive. This, oops, hold on. That is our Z base. Hey, Robert, good morning. You remind me every time we talk, sir. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you. So Z base. Now remember, when we do per unit, we are going to base values. Base values. So whenever we do per unit, we need to, whoops. I don't know what the heck I just did. So whenever we do, I'm saying it again, I'm saying it 6 times. So whenever we do per unit, we need to establish our base. We know in this case, 500 kVA is our base kVA. We know that our primary is 480 volts. 480 volts is our base voltage on the high side. 208 volts is our base volts on the low side. And then we know our base amps. Here's what we're going to do. Over here is our base amps, right? And this is our base amps. And then on this high side, we also have base Z. And we have a low side, base Z. So we have to calculate the Z. And what is Z? Is equal to V over, V is equal to IR, V over I, right? So for the high leg, for the high side, my base amps is my full load amps. And for the low side, my base amps is my full load amps. So I have my voltage divided by my base amps, and that's how I get my base. So remember, my full load amps on the primary was 601.4. And because we're dealing with a single phase, a phase amp, I take 480 divided by the square root of 3. So, and hopefully, oh, let's see if I did this. Yes, I did it. So if I take 480, enter square root of 3, divide, and then divide that by my base amps, which is 601.4, 601.4 divide, I get 0.4608, right? So 0.4608, and there is my base amps right here, 0.46, I'll highlight it in yellow, 0.4608, or I'm sorry, my base Z. Now, why is the base Z very important? When you're doing per unit, I need to take all of my actual ohms and divide that by the base to get per unit. So what I'm showing you here is that I'm doing my per unit calculations in this Excel spreadsheet. All right, so I have my, let's take a look at what, if I take this to 12, let's watch the impedance, 0.01977, 0.011864. I'm going to take that to 12. It reduced my source impedance. So that means my fault currents, my I short circuit values will go up, right? If I make it a 6, and you'll see that right down here, I short circuits. All right, so 50,000 amps, and it just basically changing this moves the angle, right? So that's all it's doing. I'm changing the X to R ratio. So how much X to how much R? All right, so now what I did was, so now I know I've got 50,000 amps available fault current, and I know how that 50,000 amps is split between real and reactive. All right? So now what I'm going to do is I add my 500 MCM cable. And remember, let's go back to our hand calculation, because what I'm going to do next is I'm working on getting SKM installed on my other laptop. So once I get that installed, the next video session will be me modeling this in SKM. So we will verify our hand calculation. What we're doing right now is we're verifying our hand calculation with Excel. And then what we're going to do is we're going to model this in SKM and verify both the Excel spreadsheet and the hand calculation with a 20-some thousand, I don't know how much money it costs to buy SKM, whatever it is. All right. And then what I'm doing in here is I'm going to show you how I calculated incident energy on this. So just bear with me. It shouldn't take that long. All right, so here's my 500 MCM, and my impedance was 0.003933 plus J 0.0065. Let me, that's my per unit impedance. Let me find my conductor 1. There it is. This is conductor 1 in its entirety. And there's my, remember, this is times 10 to the negative 3, so that's 0.00393. And then this is times 10 to the negative 3, so that's 0.00651. And if I go back to my spreadsheet, there is my 0.3. I'm going to highlight it in yeller. There it is. That's my 0.00393, and there's my 0.0065. Now you'll notice I have a lot more decimal points, so my numbers aren't going to be exact because I used my calculator and I rounded out, right? So I went down to only so many decimal points. The more decimal points you put in, the numbers will change. So, KC Mill, thank you. Thank you, Robert. KC Mill, KCMIL. I'm showing my age. I'm showing my age, my friend. All right, so I've got 125 feet and I've got 2 per conductor. And I get 31,000. Let me put a little paren in there. So I go from 50,000 amps to 31,157. So now what I'm doing, Robert, you're going to love this. I go to this spreadsheet, and what I have here, this is modeling IEEE 1584. So I implemented the IEEE 1584 equations in my spreadsheet. My bolted fault current was 31.15. So let's go back here. 31.157. 31.157. And let me just take some of that off. So there's my bolted fault current value. And with that bolted fault current value, I calculate 15.6 arcing current maximum and 13.357 minimum. So if I come back over here, I have 13.357 minimum and 15.609. Let's go back and compare that. Yep, 15.609, 13.357, 15.609, 13.357. So the next step is to determine a clearing time. So now I'm going to go to my Eaton website, because there is no reason you would not buy any other circuit breaker other than an Eaton circuit breaker, right? I mean, there would be no I couldn't fathom why you would do something that insane. But in any case, here is this is a 300 to 600 amp. Here is a 700 to 800 amp molded case circuit breaker, which your most inexpensive solution is going to be a molded case circuit breaker. And you know what wins out on most of these projects? This tells me that I can adjust my instantaneous from 4 times to 8 times. And what I'm going to plan on doing is using 4 times. Now, what's the inrush current on a transformer? Let's do Eaton transformers. Low voltage transformers. I had a catalog, remember? I had a dry type catalog. So 3-phase. Nope. I want Eaton 500 kVA. 500 kVA transformers. All right, let's go to resources because I want to go to the catalog. I want to go to, is it the brochure? Eaton's low voltage dry type distribution transformers. I had a Eaton transformer impedances. Transformer impedances. There we go. I don't know. It keeps. There we go. All right. So remember this. We were looking through this, and we found a 500 kVA transformer in here somewhere. 225, 300, 300 kVA, 500. Here we go. And we used 5.4% impedance. There's our percent impedance. All right, so let's go find our 500 kVA transformer again. Dadgummit. 225, 225, 500. There's our 5.4 and 1487. That's that number right there. 1487 is the inrush. Let's go to the top. Inrush practical maximum. So 1487. And if we go back to the trip curve, let's go back to this MDL. I want an 800 amp. This is 800 amp. Your instantaneous pickup is 4 times. So 4 times, I'm going to do 800 amps, 4 times, and it's 3,200 amps. And it's plus or minus 20%. Plus or minus 20%, so 0.8 times. So that's 2560 is the leading edge. 2560 is greater than that 1487. So if I put my, hey Jim, if I bring my instantaneous down, whoop, hold on. If I bring my instantaneous down, I will down to the minimum on this MDL breaker, then I will be above the inrush current of the transformer. So I'm golden. So what that means is, if I'm at 4 times, now this is in current in percent of breaker trip unit rating. And 100%, whoa. 100% right there is, watch this. I think I can do this. No. Can I? Yeah. So 100% right here is 800 amps. So if I had 1600 amps, I take 1600 amps divided by 800, that would be 2, and multiply that by 100, and that would be 200%. So that would be 1600 amps, right? Piece of cake. So if I go back to my spreadsheet, what I did here, I know my arcing currents, my minimum arcing current is 13,357. 13,357. So what I do with that is I go 13,357, divide that by 800. That gives me, and multiply that by 100%. That's 1,669%. 1,669%. 1,669% puts me, if this is 1,000%, and this is 2,000%, 1,500 is probably, because it's log to log, it's probably right in here somewhere. So I'm going to estimate it to be a clearing time of right in here, and I'm going to bring that over. So I'm around 0.023, 0.023. Oh, look at that. Look. So I put 0.023 clearing time right here. All right. I'm going to highlight that yellow. That's 0.023 clearing time. Now my other one is my higher arcing current is 15,609. So I take 15,609, divide that by 800, multiply that by 100, that is 1,951%. 1,951% puts me almost right here at the 2,000 mark. So I'm a little over 0.02. I'm just going to say it's 0.021 for giggles. 0.021. And I'm going to highlight that clearing time right there. All right, so these are I'm going to put those in. I'm going to make those like an orangey color, right? So those are my two clearing times for my two arcing currents. That's a very critical piece of the pie whenever we're doing an incident energy calculation. So now I know my minimum arcing current, I know my maximum arcing current, I know my clearing time for both the minimum and maximum arcing currents. Now what I do is I put this over on this spreadsheet. And you're going to love this one, Jim. So I'm at 0.48. I'm at 480 volts. Where am I at in the power system? I'm on the line side. I'm at 0.4 freaking 8. Well, that's a big difference. My bolted fault current is 31.16. My clearing times were 0.021 and 0.023. My maximum arcing current was 0.24, 0.94 kVA. My minimum was 21.9. So my maximum arc flash calculation is 1.4, and my minimum arc flash calculation is 1.3. Let's go back. So at the end of this conductor run, I'm at, oh wait, what am I talking about? Yeah, this is at the primary side of the transformer. This is at the primary side of this transformer, okay? So my incident energy, and I'm gonna highlight that in, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make it red, and we're gonna make the letters white. All right, so there's my calories per centimeter squared at the line side of this 500 kVA transformer downstream of an 800 amp circuit breaker. I'm in the instantaneous region on the minimum arcing current, and that is based upon, actually, I can raise my instantaneous pickup to the maximum setting and not have a problem. Because if you look at the trip curve, okay, this and this. Remember, I'm plus or minus 20%. So that's my band. My arcing currents are over in this region. So I'm sort of on that curve up. I'm on the cusp. But if I follow this down like that, I'm golden. So I could raise or lower the instantaneous on this. All right, so let's go back. So now what I'm going to do is I modeled my transformer. There's my 500 kVA transformer. There's my 480 primary, 208. There's the 5.94, because remember, I took it times 1.1, increased it by 10%. There's my full load amps on the secondary, which is my base amps. And my base per unit, my Z per unit is 5.94 divided by 100, so it's 0.0594. And I assumed it's all reactive. I didn't do a real and reactive component. My secondary base is 208s line to line. My Z base for the secondary is my 208. Let's do that. Remember, that's Jake. Remember, it's 500 kVA divided by 3 square root divide 0.208 divide. There's my full load amps. It's V over, it's V base, which is 208. So it's 1 over the full load amps times 208 divided by 3 square root, 0.086528. And that is exactly what I have for my Z base right there. So that's the number that I will use to get per unit. Once I calculate the ohmic values of the 500 MCM conductors, 500 kc mil conductors downstream, I will divide that by my base Z and get a per unit value. So based upon the upstream 50,000 amps, the 125 foot of two 500 kc mil in parallel, plus a transformer at the secondary, I have 17,793.28 amps. All right. So at the secondary, 17,000. So this would be 17,793. 17,793. This is at 0.208, not at 480. So I got to change my voltage. There's my bolted fault current value. My arcing currents, my highest arcing current is 9,369. My lowest arcing current is 8,017. So 9,369 and 8,017. Those are my two values. Now, what I have to do to determine the clearing time of that, I have to reflect those numbers to the primary. How do I do that? To reflect 8,017 to the primary of this transformer, I take 8017 times 208 divided by 480. That's the secondary voltage times the primary voltage, because you know what? A transformer does not stop doing its job just because there's a fault on the secondary. The primary amps, the upstream 800 amp breaker is going to see 3,474 amps. And if you look on my spreadsheet, here's my 3,000. I'm going to highlight that in yellow. There's my 3,474 amps on the primary. So now what I got to do is, remember, I'm on an 800 amp breaker. I go back to the trip curve. Now, where am I at? At 3,474, I take 3,474, divide that by 800, because that's the breaker size, multiply that by 100, and I get 434%. So on here, there's 100%, there's 200%, there's 300%, there's 400. 434% is somewhere in this region, which even on the minimum, even if I put the primary breaker on the minimum, I'm still in the long time region. So I'm going to delete the screenshot. Remember, I'm right around in this 400%. I'm going to be anywhere from 10 seconds to 30 some seconds. But what I'm going to do now there is instead of putting in 10 or 15 seconds, I'm going to put a clearing time of 2 seconds. That's that 2-second rule that we get from IEEE 1584. And what is that assumption? That assumes that, you know what, the energy is going to be so much, you're going to be laying on the ground, the energy is going over top of you, or something so bad has happened at that point, you're not in the picture after 2 seconds. 9,300. So let's take a look at 9,369. So let's take the 9,369 and reflect that to the primary. 9,369 divided by 800 times 100 is 1,171. So that 1,171, there's my 1,000%. Let me do this. Watch this. Boom. Okay. There's my 1,000%. There's 2,000. That's probably around 1,500. 1,100 is probably somewhere in that region. So we got a clearing time of, I don't know, 0.025, something like that, for 9,000. So I'm going to 1,171. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. 9,369. I'm going to do the math again. 9,369 amps. 480. 208. 208 times 480 divide. That's what I didn't do. Is 4,059. 800 divide, that's 5 times, 100 times, so I'm at 507. I didn't do the transposition. So 507, I'm down in here. So my arcing current is down in this region, which 500 some, let me do delete. 500 some, boy, I am 507. I'm probably, I'll you know what, I'll give it to you. I'll say I'm around, if that's 0.03, let's do this. If this is 0.03, remember 500, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is 500 right here. If that's 0.03, that's 0.05, this is 0.04, I'm going to say 0.04, conservative, a little bit higher. Oops. I'm going to say 0.04, okay? So I am right about here. Okay, that's my 500 line. I'm at 501, so I'm going to say 0.04. So I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to put in 0.04. All right, so my clearing time on the low end, 8,000, is 2 seconds because remember it was way too high. On the high end, it's 0.04, but I've got to use the worst case. So when I come over to this, there's my 0.04 and there's my 2 seconds. The incident energy is anywhere from 0.874 all the way up to 36.295. And you know how I got to label that? I'm going to label that 36.3 calories per centimeter squared. And that is at the secondary terminals of the transformer. And that's because I am reflecting that current to the line side. So now I'm going to add another 500 kc mil, 500 kc mil, 10 foot, 6 conductors per phase. This is going to a panel board. That's going to give me 576 amps, or 17.6 kiloamps. And then to get my arcing currents, there's my 17.58. My highest arcing current is 9.25 kiloamps. My lowest is 7916. And then I come back, I come back over to this, and there's my 7916, 9250. I have to now, done, delete. So now I have to transpose that up, right? So 7916, because the protecting overcurrent device is that 800 amps. So let's get out the calculator. 7916 times 208 divided by 480. That's 3,430 amps. 3,000, there's 3,000. Whoops. Let's do this. Okay, there is 3,000. Hold on. Yeah, 3,430 amps. Then I divide that by 800. 800 divide 100 multiply. That's 100%. So that's 428%. So there's 400%. There's 500%. Here is 400%. Here is 500% on the trip curve. And I'm at 428%. So I'm probably down in here somewhere. And I am down in here. That means that I am in that 2-second range. Let's do the other current. The other current was 9,250. So we go 9,250 times 480. Nope, times 208. Divide that by 480. I get 4,000 amps on the primary. If I want to compare that to the trip curve, I divide that by 800. Multiply that by 100, and that is 501% of an 800 amp rating. So 501% puts me right in here, which again, 501%, let's do done, delete. There's my 500. And oh man, I am right here. So I'm going to say again, 0.04 clearing time. Oops. Sorry about that. So there's my 500 is about right down here. 500. Whoa. Can't go any higher. You see the 500? If I scroll up, my clearing time is in between 0.03 and 0.05, which is 0.04. So I'm going to say 0.04 in my spreadsheet. For the higher 0.04, and my calories has to be based upon the 2 seconds, which will be 35.8. So at the end of that first run at that panel board, my calories per centimeter squared based upon an 800 amp thermomagnetic, my lowest cost solution upstream, is going to be 35.8. And what we'll do once we get SKM installed, which I just got the message from IT saying, hey, we're ready to install it. So I'm going to finish this out. But once we get SKM installed, we'll change the breakers upstream and see what we can do to reduce the energy at panel 2. So now the other option we had, remember, was putting another length. And we're going to do this. I'm going to take these, Control C, Control V. I'm going to take 500 kc mil. I'm going to put another 10 foot in, thinking I land on a disconnect. So what I'm doing now is I am doing this. I come down to a transformer. I am going to do this. And this is going to be my 2000 amp breaker right there. So, and this is a 2000 amp MLO panel. All right. So now I need to figure out the incident energy here based upon the clearing time of that 2000 amp breaker. And what I know is that the fault current at that panel is 16,362 or 363 amps. My arcing currents, I got something screwed up here. So let's go back over to our spreadsheet. Let's go back over to the 10 seconds. So let's take a look. 16,362. 16,362. My two arcing currents. So my minimum is 7,344. 7,344. That's that. Okay, I got the wrong one there. And my maximum is 8,582. So if I do, instead of G7, I'm going to do this. I'm going to multiply that times 1,000. 7,343. And I am going to, instead of G7, I need C7. I need C7. So I'm going to turn that to C7. And I'm going to multiply that by 1,000. So there's my two numbers, okay? And let's do this. Let's put a boom and get rid of the decimal. Boom and get rid of that decimal. So I've got 7,344 and 8,582. So then what I do is I need to find a 2,000 amp breaker. I'm going to go to the Eaton website because I would not think of buying anything different. I need a 2,000 amp breaker, which would be an RD or an RG. I'm going to go with a 310 plus because I think that's probably the lower cost. And once I get into an R frame, there is no thermomagnetic. It's all electronic. So let's find the instantaneous. These are instantaneous. That's a 310 trip unit. What are these? Current in amps. I need an adjustable instantaneous. Here we go. Boy, I don't like, oh, here we go. Okay, fixed instantaneous override. Boy, that's up there. What's my arcing currents? 7,344. So I need an instantaneous pickup. I need to be in the instantaneous region around 7,300 amps. 7,300 amps. And I don't think that's going to cut it on a 2,000 amp breaker. That's up to 1,200 amps. What's this one? There's a 2,000. Here we go, short time pickup. Here we go, that's the short time pickup. That's the short time. I want instantaneous. Well, we can do short time. I can do short time at 200 milliseconds, 0.2. And I can go down to, on a 2,000 amp breaker, I can go down to 4,000 amps. And that's well below my 7,344. And if my short time pickup, let's just do short time pickup at 200 milliseconds. So that's 0.2 seconds. If I change this to 0.2, I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to change this to 0.2 clearing time. I'm at 4 calories. Much better than 35.8, okay? I'm at 3.9. That's at 0.2, but I want to go better. That's at a 0.2. And that's at 3 times. That's at 6,000 amps, so that's at 3x, right? So if I look back on my iPad here, that's at 3x. So what I'm looking at is I'm looking at this curve. I am looking at this curve. Oh, I can change colors. Great. Red. And I think I can change it. Can I make it thicker? I don't know if I can make it thicker. Can I? Can I make it dark? Oh yeah, I can. There we go. Thicker. So I'm at this one right here 3 times, which 3 times 2,000 is 6,000. So that pickup would be 6,000 amps. I would be within the 7344 and the 8582, and they're both at the same clearing time because that is at 0.2 seconds. So my 0.2 seconds does a heck of a lot for me, right? So let's do this. I'm still interested in if I can, I don't think I can get an instantaneous pickup. See, all of these are short delay pickup ranges, 4,000 to 16,000. I want an instantaneous, and here's an instantaneous. There's the maintenance mode. So the maintenance mode, if I put maintenance mode on that, I can go down as 0.03. So let's go back to and make this 0.03. 0.03. Now I'm at 0.59. So if I put maintenance mode on that 2,000 amp breaker, go into a main lug only panel board, I can get my energy down to less than a calorie. And we're gonna test all of this out whenever we get SKM installed, which my IT department just sent me a instant message. So that's what I had for you today. I wanted to at least run through that really quick. I wanted to run through that really quick with y'all and see how that went. But I now have we verified our numbers. We verified our numbers in the hand calculation that we did 2 days ago. Yesterday, I went over how do I calculate the per unit value. Yes, Robert, and this is only valid if the equipment has been maintained. That is absolutely correct. And yesterday I took the 50,000 amps and showed you how I converted that over to an impedance value. So we have the impedance values. We have now a spreadsheet that does both my incident energy and my available fault current calculations. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to load this puppy up with SKM, and we are going to do this example in SKM. That'll be probably tomorrow. All right. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you got something out of this tech session, and I hope it helped. If you have any questions, please send me an email. Thanks. Take care. Stay safe. We'll see you probably tomorrow with SKM, hopefully, if the installation process goes good today. Take care, stay safe, and please stay healthy. See you tomorrow.